What's up, guys? This is another episode of Off the Post, and I'm your host, DJ Redcap. And we are doing our. Am I still frozen? Am I still frozen?
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Now? Okay, good. We're good, people. We're good, and we're live. And we are doing our final little NWSL. I called it an overview. I guess it's just review of the whole season. Talk about little bits here and there, just for you, and then we'll tell you about later on some stuff we're gonna do as the off season.
Oh.
Where did his voice go?
You hear me?
Well,
you're real quiet, DJ.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Introductions. We're going to just say introductions and introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Courtney. You've seen a lot of me in the Red Cap's absence, so I'm just happy to be here again.
Introduce yourself, Jim Carl.
hi, I'm Jen. Number one. There's two of us today. So I'm
number one.
Me too. This is really awkward. DJ, you need to fix your technology down there.
No, can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
It's my webcam. It's my mic in there, too, so it acts up sometimes. All right, but continue.
Yeah, I really have nothing to say, so moving on.
And let's reintroduce you to someone who was on the show during the World Cup. Jim Cooper, what's been up lately?
Just got back from Portland, went to the final last week. That was a pretty cool experience, but of course, you know, I think it could have been even cooler, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But happy to be on the show, and of course, repping my 3-star USA goalkeeper jersey and my NWSL glasses, championship glasses. And I have a pair to give away to some lucky fan.
Yeah, awesome.
There we go. We got the giveaways going. That always drives people in, so people start looking for that. I guess we should start with you first, Jim Cooper, since you have a lot to say and you were actually at the championship game. So what were your thoughts on the championship game?
Well, we knew it was going to be a really close game. The question going back and forth, I mean, those of us that were in Portland and arguing about it was, you know, which way it was going to go. I was thinking it was going to be penalty kicks. I actually told Nicole Barnhart the day before, I said, it's going to be you making the winning save. You know, after, you know, she suffered a loss in penalty kicks in 2011 to the New York Flash. A lot of people thought it was going to be 1-0, and it ended up, of course, being 1-0. And I love that what Vlatko Andonovski told Amy Rodriguez turned out to be true, that he said, you'll get one chance, and that'll be the difference, and that's all it takes. It'll be a very frustrating game for you, but that one chance will be the difference. So great game. Not the most exciting game if maybe you were new to NWSL, but, you know, for those of us watching all season, I think it was the right teams in the final, and a great final, and most importantly, a really great crowd, more than 13,000, which is very impressive. Largest crowd for a women's soccer final in the U.S. since 2002. And keep in mind, this was a weeknight, so great crowd and pretty good ratings too. So that's the stuff I was really pleased with.
All right. Courtney, your thoughts on FC Kansas City being in the final and how they played?
Yeah, I was really questionable about FC Kansas City at some parts in the season just because they, you know, I talked about this on the wrap-up show last week. They kind of started, I kind of had an iffy season for the early parts of the season. I was at the game, the Spirit home opener, where they lost, I think, 3-0, and they just didn't look good. Just they were kind of hit or miss throughout the season, but I think that, you know, they had a lot of really good players step up, especially when the allocations were gone, and I think that, again, they're one of the right teams to be in the final because they just were consistent. I know we always joke about them not being the most interesting team to watch, but I actually think during the final they were less boring than I think they usually are, so that was exciting for me just because I know we talk on the show all the time about, like, oh, Kansas City, they're great, but they're just not exciting sometimes, but I think they actually played really well, and you know, we talked about Amy. I talk about Amy Rodriguez a lot on here also, and I think that, you know, she did have chances she didn't convert, but it really only, like you said, it only takes one, and she got the one that counted. So I think that they had a really great game.
Carl, the #1 GN, do you feel like FC Kansas City is a dynasty in the making?
Yeah, I mean, Kansas City definitely stepped up in the final, but I also don't think Seattle played their best game either. So, Seattle's D-line has been great all season, and I don't think they were that great during the final. We talked about on the last show Kendall Fletcher continuously getting beat over on her side. So, Kansas City, I think, played well in the final. I would have liked to see maybe both teams at their full potential. I don't know what was happening, what was going on there, why suddenly the D-line for Seattle looked a little bit weaker, or maybe Tim Rack was just that good on that side. But, yeah, I definitely – I saw Seattle getting to the final. I didn't see Kansas City getting to the final, but that's my opinion.
Yep. And I guess we're going to go with you, Jen, so you can wrap this up. Can you see these two teams making it? Jen Cooper, not the other Jen. Can you see these two teams making it back? And any other thoughts on the championship?
Well, I would say these are our two strongest clubs in terms of consistency. You know, they've had their same coaches all 3 years now with a lot of success. Kansas City making the final all 3 years. Seattle, after that really tough first year, turning it around. Very solid club. I wouldn't be surprised to see them, back next year. That, of course, you do want to mix it up. You want to see some changes, and I think we will see a lot of off-season movements, especially if we get the Orlando expansion that changes rosters significantly. But for something to cap off the season and also to cap off Lauren Holiday's career. I loved that storyline. I loved hearing the Rose City Riveters cheering so loudly for Kansas City. I was so pleased to see not only a traveling contingent from Seattle, but also a traveling contingent from Kansas City. So, the support's there. Of course, we had all the owners there because they had met earlier that day. So it was kind of great, I think, for them to see. It's like, yeah, there is so much potential here. My frustration, like we talked about before the show started, was it could have been more of an event. When the date was set so far in advance, and we knew far in advance that it was a predetermined site, like there should have been more signage in Portland. There should have been an event in Portland. There should have been a shirt you could buy, some more takeaways from it, because we all know that there's tons of women's soccer fans that will travel for something like this and want the collectibles and want to do whatever they can to support the sport. The Portland fans, sure, their team wasn't in it, but they showed up, and I'm sure they'd love to have a T-shirt that says, I was at the 2015 NWSL final in the Rose City. So to me, that the only downside, it wasn't on the field, it was off the field.
Yeah, that makes sense, and hopefully it's something that they'll look to work on next year, because, like I said, it should have been such a big event. That whole week they could have been doing stuff, really, and just boosted it even more. So next year, NWSL, get it kind of right, or more right.
More right, yeah.
More right, there we go.
More right.
So now let's jump into really our NWSL review. We're going to just go over a few things about the season, some players that stood out, talk a little bit, I guess, about the World Cup again. We're going to go back to you, Courtney. What player stood out to you this year?
Oh, man. I would say I'm going to pick one player from the Flash, one not from the Flash, even though it's hard to think. Were there players that stood out from the Flash that had a rough season? But we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But from the Flash, I would say Lynn Williams before she got injured. I think a lot of people maybe were not familiar. Like, a lot of people were expecting, Sam Ewis and Abby Dalkemper to be drafted, but I don't know that a lot of people knew who Lynn Williams was necessarily. And then she came on and was just, unfortunately she got hurt at the end of the season, towards the end of the season, but she had a great season. I think even when she wasn't scoring, she was probably the person who provided the most offense or kind of had the ball the most for the Flash. So I think that she had a really great season, and it was unfortunate that she got injured. And then my other person, there's a lot I could choose from, but I might steal Jen's and say Megan Oyster just because again, we talked about how she should have been in the final three, should have probably won Rookie of the Year. She was incredible. She had a great season and just was, a solid, force for a rookie season, just incredible. So those would be, sorry, Jen Carl, that I probably stole one of yours, but those would be my top two for the season, I think.
Jen Carl, did she steal one of yours? And if so, who else did you have?
Yes, she did.
Sorry, Jen.
You did. It's fine because I'm going to steal one of yours, DJ.
That's fine.
For me, Brittany Cameron was huge this year. She really stepped up this season. She had an absolutely phenomenal year. I think, Sky Blue finishing where they did, it was unfortunate, but I think Brittany Cameron was absolutely huge this year. She was phenomenal. Other players that stood out to me, Bev Yanos up in Seattle. I kind of called her early on as one of the stronger points. I think most of us did actually, one of the stronger points coming forward for Seattle, and she definitely stepped up. She showed that she proved herself. So I'd go with Brittany Cameron and Bev Yanes probably as my top two.
And Jen Cooper, any players to that?
Well, I second that motion about Bev Yanes. I was kind of expecting more from her in the final. I mean, she had such a great season. And along the line of goalkeepers, I feel like Haley Kottmeyer and Bianca Henninger didn't really get their due as backups who were, really stepped up during that World Cup break. And, they were starters. They could both be starters on other teams. And then almost every rookie this year, really stepped up. Of course, you look at Chicago, it's like, how did they get so many good rookies? But, Daniel Colaprico, Aaron Gilliland, of course, Lynn Williams and a lot, that whole draft class, Sophia Huerta, Stephanie McCaffrey, is like such a great draft class. I'm really wondering, what it's going to be like in 2016 because I just don't think the depth is going to be there in the draft.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I guess I'll have to play the bad guy on this next question. A player that didn't live up to any expectations. Well, I guess it's DJ's time. Only player that really shocked me was Stephanie Roach because they hyped her up so much. And I don't know if it was just because of the great goals. So I guess I'm going to Houston with this one. Sorry about that. And then, and then she just, it just seemed like she disappeared. They cut her, and that was that really. So I really want to see if she's going to
explain that.
Yeah, go for it.
Insight on that. Poor Stephanie was really a victim of having a 20-player roster. Okay, once Stephanie Oakes went down with the season-ending injury, they had to bring in a new defender, and so you had to make space for a new defender with Steph. Randy Waldrum's plan had been to gently ease her into NWSL because technically she was such a great player, but what a lot of European players, the issue they have is adjusting to the physicality. So he was really hoping to give her time, and when you've only got 20 players and you need that international spot. So look who he brought in with that international spot, Ellie Brush. He changed that back line. She was starter from day one. And it is unfortunate because you can kind of see the front office side of that move that, okay, here's a great name, and the exposure that it brought the league over in the UK, even if she never played, just like suddenly you have papers that never wrote about the NWSL writing about the NWSL. But I just, good thing is Roach ended up with Sunderland, so at least, she didn't, end up as that one-hit wonder that no one ever heard from again.
Correct. I agree with that. So, it works out, I guess. I can understand that now. It was just sad. I was sad about it.
It is, yeah.
All right, well, we're going to stick with you, Jen Cooper, actually, and we're going to ask you teams that impressed. We won't have to ask Jen Carl this because we know she's going to say Washington Spirit. So, Cooper, teams that impressed?
Chicago making the playoffs for the first time, not only the NWSL era, but also the WPS era. Kind of weak towards the home stretch, but again, just a great game plan for having 8 World Cup players missing. I thought that was great. Seattle, it kills me how good they are. It really does. I want them to not play as well, but hey, that's just, they're building a dynasty. I see Kansas City building a dynasty, and both of them, I think it comes down to 2 amazing coaches that have their players buy into what they're doing. We've all seen from the national team players different levels of commitment to their clubs once the World Cup was over. Thursday in Portland at the post-game press conference, it was so clear on Megan Rapinoe's face how gutted she was that they lost. And then Amy Rodriguez and Lauren Holiday come in, and you just see the tears of joy in their eyes having won, and Lauren's last game and all that stuff. So I thought it was neat that you can see these players, the club means as much to them as playing for the national team.
Carl, I'm going to ask you what team didn't impress you this year now.
Oh. You can say it, Jen, if you want to say it.
No, I was actually going to say that the Flash did impress me, so there's that. The same team that never impresses me, which is Boston.
Oh, poor Boston.
I know, I'm always hating on Boston, but they deserved it after they waived Bowman. Yeah, I mean, Boston for me just, I don't, like, a lot of people don't expect a lot from Boston, I guess, because they did kind of get shorted a little bit as far as allocations are concerned. But with the World Cup year, that shouldn't have made too much of an impact. If anything, that should have made them maybe a little bit more consistent. And the fact that they ended up at the bottom of the table was really disappointing to me. I mean, I know part of the way through the season, Julie King had that suspension. That hurt. There were a couple of other little things that happened here and there to some of their better players, but for the most part, I did expect a little bit more out of Boston. They started off the season really strong. They were in the top 4. It looked like they were gunning for playoff contention, and then they just totally died off about halfway through the season, and I expected more out of them, I think. So for me, Boston was the big disappointment this year.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I didn't expect them to do much, but it was amazing that they were doing so good early on. Then it was like, oh, now you're right where you need to be. So I thought they were supposed to be around there, but I can understand that. I guess we're about to talk a little bit about the World Cup again. Oh, I know you're at the Corey. What were your expectations of the World Cup? Do you think it was going to hurt the league a bit, and did it have a positive experience?
Were you talking to me? You cut out for a second.
Yeah, I was talking
Okay.
to you.
Okay, cool. I don't know. I think sometimes in terms of attendance, I think the World Cup kind of hurt just because a lot of people who will go because they love like women's soccer and love the league. And then you have people who go because of the big names that are there. And then I think a lot of people didn't go to games because they were like, I don't know who these people are. Like all the big players are gone. But I think like as far as competition though, like I think we noted so much parity in the league this year. And I think a lot of that. I think that would have been the case anyways, but I think the time that was really shown was during the World Cup just because all the teams fairly, and some had more than others that were gone, but so many people, you know, we talk about the Flash all the time, and I kind of crap on them even though I love them and it makes me sad, but, I mean, they technically, I thought not the players, because the players are great, but, like, they had a really rough season, but were still technically not eliminated until, like, later in the season, so I think that during the time that the World Cup was going on, I think a lot of teams that, you know, were able to kind of either keep ground or gain ground just because of that. I also think there was some adjustment when the players came back from the World Cup, getting back in with the teams. I think a lot of us expected, oh, the national team players are back, like they're going to make a big impact. And not that they didn't, but I think you're gone from your team for a chunk of the season, and then you have to kind of reintegrate back in. If you can play with these people, you only play with them for maybe 2 or 3 games, you know, before the World Cup, and you have to come back and get used to that kind of setup again. And the team has to get used to having you back too, because they've played a certain formation, certain lineup for X amount of weeks, a month plus, including like camp and stuff like that. And then and like the friendlies, and then you have to come back and, you know, your people are changing lineups, you're changing positions. So I think it did have an impact, but I mean, I think it was really interesting to watch while the national team players were gone. And I think it was still exciting, even though some people might not agree. But just the fact that all the teams were so close, especially during that period, was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with that. Yeah, it was. I didn't know really with the World Cup. I was kind of afraid that the attendance was going to take a huge hit. But once everyone came back, it seemed like it was such a surge and so much good stuff happened from it. I was kind of happy. I was like, all right, the league survived the World Cup year. Now we'll see what happens with the Olympics and see how the league did. But I don't think it'll be as scared. I won't be as scared as I was during the whole Olympics thing. I mean, World Cup thing, everything was just going to die, and then the league was going to fold and everything. So I was proud of what the World Cup did for the league. Good job, World Cup. You helped us out a bit. Let's keep working on that, too. All right. This one is for you, Jen Cooper. I'm going to ask you about notable stories since you cover a lot on your own show. What notable story here? Did you have any complaints about the reffing, as most people do every week?
Not as much reffing. I just think the scheduling is still an issue. I mean, like you're talking about with the World Cup. they thought a lot about how to work around the World Cup to take that break during the group stage, and I think that was okay, but I didn't like that the first day of the World Cup, June 6th, there were still NWSL games. So
Yep.
Canada's kicking off the World Cup, and we've got, Houston's got 3 Canadians, and 2 hours later, we're kicking off a home game, and I feel like that, you're kind of working at cross purposes. And then I know, like, the June 20th, June 27th games, those totally got overshadowed. And I know it's hard to take off an entire month, but I hope they look back at the season as they're deciding what to do for 2016, and adjust appropriately. Keep in mind with the Olympics, sure, it's a smaller tournament and not as many teams, but it's going to take a chunk of the summer. It's later in the summer. Okay, so it's not like it's affecting the middle, it's affecting a later chunk. So this is the first time that we had playoffs go all the way into October, and that 2.5-week break, the finals and the final. So there's a lot that, okay, this kind of worked, this kind of didn't, and this is the normal process of leagues figuring this stuff out. I mean, we see all the professional leagues tinkering with playoff formats and scheduling formats. I've been working in MLS for 10 years for the Dynamo, and it's the season's been all over the place. The scheduling's been all over the place. One of the things that I really hope to see for 2016 is that number 10 team, because then you avoid having that bye week for teams. If you've got 10 teams, that's 5 games a weekend. That's a really nice schedule. And I know it's cliche to say it, but I still love to say it. It's like just the fact that we're going into a season 4 with another expansion team, which, I mean, it's got to be announced soon. That's huge. Whatever problems they may be, that's huge. That's a great sign for women's soccer.
Can I just comment on something real quick? Well, just that you mentioned, I think that, I agree. Like, I remember that being so excited about the World Cup kicking off, and the Flash also had a game at the exact same time. And
I think everybody.
And I love watching the Canada games. Also, when I was I cover the Flash, and I was just there, being like trying to like secret check the score a while. And then on my ride home, the other game was on, so I just was like, oh my goodness, like there should not be games. It's the first, it's the very first day. Like I understand. Like, again, even the other games, I kind of conflicted, but especially the very first game, the host country playing. Like I just was like, oh gosh, like I wish I could be there right now, but I'm here doing my like NWSL duty. Like I feel like I need to be at these games also, but it was just very, I understand, like I definitely agree with that should not be, especially like the very first game of a tournament is something that should probably, that you have people playing it, like you have NWSL players playing it also. It should, not have people make that choice. Do I go to the NWSL games, watch the NWSL games, or do I watch, the World Cup? So I definitely agree with that.
I guess I got a quick comment on that too. It just felt weird because I got such a high from watching the World Cup, and then it was just like, oh, there's still some NWSL left, and I don't want to come down, and feel bad about it. But I'm like, well, I gotta watch these still. But it just didn't feel right with those two things going on because I'm so used to World Cup standing alone, no club teams going on and then you just focus on that really, but I don't know, it was just awkward. Like I said, the scheduling of it wasn't good at all in my opinion. So I guess we can just now actually speak about our overall thoughts on the league. You actually touched on a bit of yours, Jen Cooper, what they could do for some improvements for next season. We're going to go with that Spirit fan. Let's see what she has to say.
Yeah, like Jen Cooper said, I mean, it's really fantastic that we are going into a year 4. I think we all kind of held our breath this entire season praying that things weren't going to fold and the World Cup wasn't going to absolutely destroy the league. Thankfully, it seems sort of to have had a little bit of the opposite effect. So going into year 4 is huge. That sponsorship deal with Nike, I think I mentioned that last show, that's huge. The fact that they're willing to extend that to 2019. The fact that we are talking about expansion, again, is huge. And I think, the rumor mill's flying, so none of this is actually confirmed, but the rumor mill's flying with 3 major national team players going to that Orlando expansion. I've seen Alex Morgan, Sydney LaRue, and Ashlyn Harris, their names all thrown around. So don't know if that'll actually happen or not, but if it does, I mean, I think things like that will just bring more parity into the league because we're looking at a brand new team now coming in that already has major talent up front. So moving forward, again, like Jen Cooper said, I think one of our big problems is scheduling. We are going to have to work with the back half of the season in the Olympics. particularly because there's going to be, players retiring, new players getting call-ups, a bunch of different things going on there. And then an issue that you kind of sort of touched on, DJ, was reffing. The officiating this year was just not good. And that, that happens in every league. The other day I was watching Sports Center or something, and they were talking about the Seattle-Detroit game, and they were having issues reffing. So it happens in any sport, in any league, whatever. But there's definitely a lack of consistency in our officiating. Some refs will call every foul under the sun. If someone trips because their shoelace is untied, someone will get a foul for it. And then others, will go out there and someone will shatter their nose and nothing will get called. So I think maybe if we can make it even a little bit more consistent, we'd be better off. I mean, it's never going to be perfect. It's human error. That's just the way it is. But at least a little bit more consistency, I think, would help improve the league a little bit and definitely help us look out for the players a little bit more.
Courtney, any final thoughts on the league improvements?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what's been said so far. I think I'm kind of it'll be interesting to see what happens with the expansion team. I know either way, whether she goes to Orlando City or not, I don't expect the Flash to have Sydney Leroux next year, and so that again, and Boston as well. I think they need to try to figure out the allocations a little bit more. I know those are going to change, but I think, and Lauren Holiday's retiring, so that kind of takes it out of it for Kansas City. But the fact that Kansas City had 4, Boston had 1, the Flash had 2. I think just trying to help balance it out again, because if Leroux does go to Orlando City, then the Flash are back to 1 allocation, and they don't. I know some teams have Canadian allocations, some teams don't. Will Canada still have allocate? There's always all those questions that come up every year. I know the same thing about Mexico. Technically, there were Mexico allocations, but they never came back into the league. And I know that that's something they talk about pulling all the time. So that's another, all things to think about. It'll be interesting to see. The rosters are definitely going to shake up with the new expansion. Regardless of who goes, whether it's the 3 that have been kind of mentioned or not, there's always speculation about that. Alex Morgan's been going to every other team. Alex Morgan was going to Houston when they announced the dash, but that didn't happen. So, anything can happen in the off season, and I always look forward to tracking all the moves and things like that. But I really am just looking forward to it. It's kind of nitpicky, but I would like to see teams. It's again something we talked about in the beginning of before we went on air. That we'd like to see just more with I guess merchandise and marketing. We were commenting about how a lot of the teams either don't have new we're going to get new jerseys this year, but they're not finalized right before the season starts, or just based on shops and logistics and things like that are not into distributors. Or not able to get them for halfway through the season, and so that's also kind of awkward. So that's just kind of a nitpicky thing I'd like to see. I know so many people who would love to be able to wear the same shirt that the players are wearing, the first game of the season, and would love to have that jersey all season. And then if a new player comes in, I use Michelle Heyman as an example. She's a very recognizable person for international, especially after the World Cup. People want to get her jersey, and they either can't get it online, or if they get it, it's going to take them. They don't get it before the end of the season. So, just nitpicky things there, and that's pretty much just some thoughts.
And finally, Jim Cooper.
Well, wait, me?
Yeah, well,
yes.
you can say what you already say what you have to say, but aren't you giving away something at this moment?
Yeah, I'm giving away something, but I also want to add on to something that Courtney said about the allocated players. It's going to be really challenging moving forward for the league because as we add more teams, it doesn't mean they're going to be adding more allocations. Mm-hmm. We know that the U.S. national team roster in terms of funds is limited, so we're not going to be able to keep this. Okay, each team gets 3, each team gets 2. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they address that moving forward, because that's not always going to be something that they can fix. And I'm really intrigued to see if we end up bringing in any new federations, maybe Australia, maybe New Zealand. We're hearing Orlando has some Brazil connection, so I think that's going to be exciting to watch. But before I sign off, I do have some freebies, and you guys can decide how to give them away. But I have 2 pairs of NWSL glasses. There we go.
Those will be mine.
And I have some programs from the final. Very simple program, but a nice little collectible with the rosters and stuff like that. So
I'm taking those too.
I appreciate being on the show and talking women's soccer with you guys. So just, let me know what fans win those prizes, and I look forward to talking to you guys once we get to 2016 about the draft and all that.
Yep,
Thank
definitely.
you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen, for joining us.
See you guys later.
I'm taking all the freebies, people. You get nothing, viewers. You get absolutely nothing. I guess it's my final thoughts. So it's just like, the Springer's final thoughts when he has it on his show. So it's like the black lights that come on me and it's just a spotlight. Everyone else fades away and it's just DJ at the very end. As you know, off the post has come a long way. Everyone sip a drink while we do this. It's been a fun season for us, definitely, because we got to cover. The thing is, we came about just at the right time. It was during the World Cup. And like I said, NWSL, so it's like perfectly before the NWSL season started. So we got to spotlight a lot of the season, and we got to just discuss tons of just football nonstop, and the little incidents like the Australian players and stuff. So it's been really fun. I think next year it's going to be even more exciting. The more teams they add, and the bigger the league gets, and the better the advertising and the endorsements get, the more fun this whole league will be for all of us to watch. And I can't wait for teams to come and pop up in more areas, and hopefully more funding will come in and more people will gain word of the league. Hopefully it won't be a thing where I'm at work and someone says, "Oh, you're doing a show on women's soccer. I didn't know they had a league. What is it on?" And it's just like me passing it word of mouth and saying, "Here, watch this YouTube video." That's you on YouTube talking about women's soccer? Yeah, they actually have a league. It's actually a real sport, as I used to tell some people as a joke. So I think it'll improve next season and we'll grow along with it and everything. It'll be just a bigger thing overall. So I think we've all enjoyed this year. We can say that, right, people? It's been a good time. Any final words, girls? I didn't even put a rant section. I don't have any rants right now.
No rants. Real quick, I just wanted to mention that, in case people are wondering, like, what's going to happen to Off the Post now, make sure you watch our social media, because I know, like, before we went on air, I was trying to put together a broad list of people who are going abroad, and shameless plug, we're going to be doing the website, Final Third's going to be doing an abroad series just to kind of weekly catch up with players who have gone abroad. Did they play? Did they have an impact? What's going on with their teams? And just to let you guys know, we'll probably be doing a couple of shows just to catch up on all that stuff as well. Like if something interesting happens, if one of the NWSL players, a couple players have really great games or things like that, we'll probably pop on and talk about it for a little while. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in the off season, just be on the lookout. Follow our social media, because we're going to be doing stuff like that. And then, of course, as Jen Cooper just mentioned, as you get closer in January towards the draft, I'm sure we'll be talking about the draft and things like that also. So we're not going away, and then we still have friendlies for the U.S. Women's National Team, so we'll be doing stuff on that, I'm sure, too. So just because the NWSL season is over doesn't mean we're going away. So watch our social media. We will still be having shows throughout the off season and following U.S. women's, friendlies, and they have qualifying in February. So make sure you're checking out our social media, because we'll still be around doing shows.
Yep, all we got to do is survive a bit of the off season, and bam, we're going to start back up with spotlights, and we'll be able to do shows leading right up to the season of spotlights, rather than doing spotlights during the season. So there's still going to be a lot going on, so just look forward to it. I think that's everything, unless you have something to say, that Spirit fan, since you became a celebrity via this show.
Magic Jen is magic.
Right, Magic Jen is magic. Now, people, I saw her at a game. Okay, why didn't you say hello? Anything to say, Jen? No, I'm good.
I'm good.
You're just in Spirit games next year. Make sure to speak to her. Don't just stare randomly, people. As I said, though, it has been a fun season, though. We've all enjoyed stuff, but this is just the end of the season. We'll still have more stuff to come, friendlies and everything else, and a lot of little international shows. Once again, I'm your host, DJ Redcap. And this is our last NWSL, review for this right now. We will be seeing you next season, or probably in a couple of weeks once we get everything situated. We'll probably end up doing something in 2 weeks. We might talk about some random stuff, because there's always something that pops up, it seems like, We'll talk about reffing. We'll talk about have open forum discussions. We'll think of something. Just stay on the lookout. And subscribe if you haven't. Don't ask me when is the next show. Is the next show going to do? No. Subscribe, and it'll be a lot easier for you.
And watch out for we're going to talk about how to give away that stuff, right? So watch out for social media, because we'll talk about how to give away those things that Jen Cooper has.
No, we're not. I'm taking it. So
No,
obviously
we
you don't
can't,
have to look up.
that's not how that works. You can't hoard the goodies.
All right, yeah, we'll give away more stuff, so that'd be cool. We'll like give it out, like do separate contests for each, so that's fair. What is it? 2 sunglasses in one program, so we can do 3 different giveaways. That's right, 3 different giveaways. I got 3 different ways. Okay, guys, that's it. Everyone, what do we usually do at the end of a show? We wave. So we're gonna wave. As you can see, Courtney Andros, that Spirit fan, the little celebrity that ever could, and DJ Redcap is waving, saying goodbye and good night.